So I have this lamp. It's never been used before. It's still in its original packaging. It's never even been plugged in. But if you look closely enough, it's been dropped. So it's been shattered. It has a bunch of crack lines all throughout. So this is going to be a trash for treasure, so to speak. Although I didn't get it from the trash, or it wasn't going to be trash, but I am still going to do my part to keep it out of the landfill. And so I have some of this here Dollar Tree epoxy, some super glue, and my intentions are to try to go over all the little shattered areas with the glue, and then I'm going to come in with some of that lightweight spackle also from the Dollar Tree, and then after that's dry, I'm going to go on top of that with some of that caulking as well before giving it a coat of spray paint. So here's a look at what I got going on after hitting it with some of that Dollar Tree epoxy. I'm coming in with my jumbo craft stick, and I'm just spreading that glue around and trying to get it inside all of those cracks and crevices. And this is one particular project where I'm not being mindful about any bubbling or anything like that. I'm being very generous with the glue because this is going to get plenty of texture, so I don't have to worry about the surface having to be smooth. And then before letting that set up to dry, I'm going to come in with some painter's tape, and I'm going to try to cover up all the black detail areas with the painter's tape, and then allowing the glue to set up and dry. So now that I covered all of the areas that I wanted protected in that painter's tape, I can now sit my lamp to the side and allow that epoxy to set up and dry. Next up, I'm dumping out this lightweight spackle into my little mixing bowl to be mixed in with a combination of some paint that I have in my stash. And this is just some Behr paint. It's a sample paint that I got from Home Depot, and it's like a cement gray color. And I'm just going to be adding a few drops to my spackle. All right, so now that I mixed in all of that spackle together with my paint, and I have it to the consistency of my liking, which is kind of a cross between, I want to say, a frosting and a very chunky peanut butter, and this is like a kind of a slate gray. So now I'm just going to come in and I'm going to smear some of that concoction over my lamp, and I'm going to try to focus on covering all of those shattered areas that I went over with the epoxy. And my main goal and focus is to just try to get this evenly spread throughout, and I'm not concentrating on it being smooth by any means, because the more texture the better. Now that I've applied the entire contents of that bowl of my spackle with my jumbo craft stick, it's now time to use the best tools for the job, which are my hands. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to push that spackle onto my lamp as such, trying to cover any spaces where I can see some of the glass peeking through. And I'm just going to continue on as such throughout my entire lamp, making sure to get full coverage. After allowing that spackle some time to set up and dry, and I gave it about an hour or so, I'm simply going to be coming in with my Dollar Tree sanding sponge, and I'm going to go over it lightly with that sanding sponge, not to smoothen out the surface, so to speak, because I do want texture, but just to take down any chunks or debris that spackle might have left behind in preparation for the next step, which is going to be to add the Dollar Tree caulking, if that makes any sense at all. After giving it that light sanding, I can now proceed and move on to the next step, which is to apply some of that caulking. And I went ahead and I saved that container from the lightweight spackle, and I cleaned it out so that I can go ahead and add my caulking to it. And this is from the tool bench section at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to follow suit and do the same procedure that I did with the lightweight spackle. And I'm going to add some of that that sample paint that I had from Home Depot. I'm going to add a couple of drops to the caulking as well. This way there won't be any changing in color, and I'm just going to squeeze out the tube as such into my little container, and I'll be adding some of that paint and mixing together well. Now that I've given my caulking a tint with that same paint that I used on the spackle, and I mixed it in well, and I have it to the consistency of my liking, I'm going to go ahead and come in and focus on some of those exposed areas where the glass might be peeking through from under the spackle, if you will. And of course, the best tool for the job is my hands, but I'm just going to be applying it as such with my jumbo craft stick first until I get all the product onto the lamp, and then I'll come in with my hands just like I did with the spackle. Okay, so now that I emptied all of the product out onto my lamp, it's now time for the fun part, which is to get messy with it and use my favorite tool of choice, which is my hands. And I'm going to try to distribute that product all throughout my lamp, just as I did with the spackle, and get it to completely cover the entire lamp. Okay, so here's a recap of what I got going on so far. Now that I've given that caulking a chance to set up and dry, I did go ahead and come in with my sanding sponge, and I went over it lightly, and I'm showing you that there's a few exposed areas where you can see some of the glass poking through, but I'm hoping that the next step will take care of that, which is to come in with some of this here Rust-Oleum spray paint, and this is in the color Stone, which is a textured spray paint, and it's supposed to look like the cover, that lid, which is kind of like a pebble stone concrete color. And so I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna hit this lamp with some of this spray paint and hope for the best. Due to inclement weather, I'll be spray painting indoors, so I have my little setup here in a box, and I'm just going to be coming in with small bursts as such to avoid any running. And now for the moment of truth. After hitting it with a coat of that spray paint, here's what we're left with, and this is what we got going on. It certainly looks like textured stone to me, and I'm loving it so far. So now it's time to reveal the protected area that we covered with that painter's tape by simply peeling it off. And I'm sure there's bound to be some seepage somewhere along the line, but that's fine. Nothing that we can't take care of with a little X-Acto knife or something, and I'm fine with that. Alright, so here's a look at the results after removing all of that painter's tape, and I'm genuinely pleased with the results. This certainly exceeded my expectations. It really looks like a piece of concrete to me, and I'm so happy to have been able to keep this little lamp out of the landfill. I feel like any imperfections that it might have just adds to the character and the rusticness of the whole piece, and I really feel like it was certainly worth my trouble. There was a few steps involved, but nothing that was too difficult or complicated, and the results certainly paid off.